Before we get into today's show, a congratulations is due and a shout out to our comments challenge winner. That's Cam Inman. Thank you very much, Cam, for all of your comments. Let's run it back today. The most comments on today's show will get a shout out early next week. So type whatever you want. You can just type 1, 2, 3, 4. You can spam me. Whatever it looks like, the most comments will win a shout out for our next show. We're going to focus a lot today on the ESPN Position Ranking series that's currently ongoing. Now, the first one we'll begin with is the interior offensive line. They had scouts, execs, coaches help ESPN rank the top 10 interior offensive linemen. In what probably isn't a surprise, Zack Martin was number 1. Now, he was number 1 overall last year as well. Being number 1 means he's got a lot of first-place votes. Duh. He was as low as number 9 on the list, which I was a little bit surprised by. But I do get it to an extent. I don't think this is as clear-cut a number 1 as it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Martin did not have his best campaign in 2023. Now, part of that was, the time missed in training camp. Part of that was he's just getting older. He is not the same spring chicken he once was many years ago. Martin has publicly said, maybe this is my last year, maybe it's not. But if you were going to pick one guard for 1 year, probably still makes a lot of sense to pick Martin because you know how good he has been over the course of his guaranteed Hall of Fame career. Here's what one AFC executive said about Martin. He's slowing down a bit, but he's still really damn good. He's everything you want in a guard. It's just about age and deterioration at this point. Look, it's hard for me to not put Zack Martin number 1 overall, at least to begin the season. I do think there's a chance that by the end of the year, he's not just not number 1 in the NFL, he might not be number 1 for the Cowboys specifically. More on that in a little bit. This might be the last year he has that top spot because he might retire next year anyway. Although if Aaron Donald hadn't retired, you could probably still put him at number 1 among defensive tackles, and you might be able to do the exact same thing with Zack Martin. Here's what one unnamed team executive told ESPN. I think he's got 1 more year at the top, and then a younger player like Trey Smith or Tyler Smith will overtake him. We will get to Tyler Smith here momentarily, but do you think Zack Martin is still the best offensive guard in the entire NFL? 1 for yes, 2 for no. It'll be today's pinned comment, so if that ad happens to come here, great. Take advantage of it. Head down there, type in 1 for yes, 2 for no, and maybe see if you can win that comment challenge as well. Despite what that one executive said about Tyler Smith being the next best guard, he was not in the top 10 of the ESPN rankings. In fact, he was the second honorable mention, as crazy as that might be. Here were the top 10 of the ESPN interior offensive line rankings. Zack Martin is number 1. Chris Lindstrom's number 2. Quentin Nelson is number 3, a little bit lower than he's been previously. Joe Thuney was number 4. Joel Bitonio's 5. They put Landon Dickerson at 6, and the argument was pass protection and that the Eagles don't do a lot of play action stuff. It's all normal drop back, which is just not really true. In fact, Dak and Hurts actually had like the same percentage of play action stuff last year, not including RPOs. It doesn't make any sense to me. Creed Humphreys 7, no clue to him being the top center. Frank Ragnow's 8, Trey Smith 9, Elton Jenkins is 10, and Wyatt Teller was number 11. Those are all great offensive, and I don't want to slander anyone in particular here. But I was very surprised to see Tyler Smith not in the top 10 after an all-pro year last season. Here's what one AFC executive said. He's the next one. Incredibly gifted, just needs more time on task. I don't know where the AFC executive ranked him, but Smith was much better in 2023 than he was in 2022. Now, how much of that was logical progression, the next step in your development? How much of that was life is easier at guard than it is at tackle? And it's not that it's easier to play, but with Smith's skill set, I think it is easier to play guard. The one big thing that I think Tyler Smith has to work on, has to improve, are the penalties. The positive here is, and you've seen with guys like Zack Martin, Sauce Gardner got it day one. When you are presumed to be a great football player, the refs eat those flags sometimes. Like they'll go, you know what? No, he did win that rep so well because he is super good. You can go back to the Connor Williams had some flags where it's like, well, that wasn't a flag. He just won the rep, but the refs didn't think he was going to have to do it, right? So I think you're going to have that positive bias that is going to be associated with Tyler Smith. I think he'll cut down to the penalties this year because not all the ones he gets flagged for are actually penalties. So is Tyler Smith a top 10 interior offensive lineman? Y for yes, N for no. Sound off in the comments section. I feel bad taking somebody else off that list, but he was a second-team All-Pro last year. Just going to ignore that? I think he has to be in the top 10 of that list. I don't really care who you're taking off. Like, he should probably be top 7, top 8. Put him at 6 for all I care. Like, the center part makes it a little bit tricky, I suppose, as well. But Jenkins is a really good football player. Frank Ragnow is great at center, but you're going to take him over the guard. Maybe just have one center in the top 10 with Humphrey. I think he has to be in the top 10 somewhere. Now, the Cowboys turnover chain is available, and in fact, for a limited time, is on sale. Get yours today over at chatsports.com/Cowboys chain. You can get one just like mine. Obviously, photo not to scale quite. It's not quite how photos work sometimes. This one is of course, silver chain. The one on sale is the navy chain. Get yours today, chatsports.com/chain. That link will be in the comment section and the description of today's show, plus a clickable link over there in that corner. Now, ESPN also did their tight end rankings, and Jake Ferguson did not crack the top 10. He was the first honorable mention behind several other players. Here, let's break down the top 10. And I have, frankly, zero complaints about the top 5. You can argue maybe you flip, a spot here or there, but in some order, I think if we're being objective here, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson should be your top 5 tight ends. Whatever order you want, even with the injury for Hawk, I think those are your top 5 guys. David Njoku was 6. Okay, it's a little rich for me. Dallas Goedert was 7, which I get that he's a solid blocker, but his production really fell off that year. Someone had him as high as 4. Someone put in Njoku at 3, by the way, which I don't get. He was a consensus top 10. Dalton Kincaid was as high as 2? How? He was good as a rookie. Not like he was off the charts insane. Like Kyle Pitts had a 1,000-yard campaign. We're putting Kincaid at 2? Ingram was 9, as high as 5. Schultz was 10. Someone put him at 4? Which I don't really get, especially when you had Jake Ferguson outproduce several of those players at tight end. Now, blocking is a factor there, sure, but I'm confused as to how Fergie wasn't at least above Dalton Schultz. So who was the bigger snub of that top 10 ESPN list? JF for Jake Ferguson, TS for Tyler Smith. Here's what one NFC scout said on Jake Ferguson. He's a fierce competitor, has some swag to him, seems to have chemistry with Dak Prescott, is a gamer. Okay, I would agree with almost all of that, actually. My issue is I don't understand how he's not top 10. Because there's a lot of metrics he's top 10 in, right? 7th in targets, only 11th in target share, because they threw it a lot. 9th in catches, 8th in yards, 15th in yards per route run. Tied for 6th in touchdowns. Yards after the catch, he was 5th. And they were trying to make a big deal out of that with Dallas Goedert. And right there, alongside, for Fergie, so okay. 7th in total EPA, it's expected points added there. At minimum, I would take Ferguson over Schultz. And I think we can say that having watched both those guys play. Now, we are trying to beat our July subscriber number. This is your update for the month so far. We are at 211, roughly halfway through, so we are on pace. Got to keep getting those subs, though. You want more free Cowboys videos? Hit that sub button right now. Now, no tackles were mentioned in the honorable mentions, getting votes, or ranked for the Cowboys. That seems fair. Can't put Terrence Steele top 10 after a bad year last season. That makes no sense. And you're not going to put a rookie on there in Tyler Guyton. That also makes 0 sense. So no shocker there, and the center got replaced too. So I'm fully on board with those lack of rankings from ESPN. By the way, ESPN going position by position. They'll make a big deal out of this tomorrow. It's the quarterbacks. We'll see where Dak Prescott ranks on that one.